The most surprising thing is that the government was almost untouched. Masoud Pezeshkian and his entire cabinet were mostly safe. This is because the real power does not lie with them. The logic of the United States and Israel seems simple. If you want to weaken a system, you do not attack the visible leader. Instead, you target the hidden power centers and the ideological leaders behind the system. This situation is not start in 2026. It began about 2 years earlier. There were many signs and patterns already visible in Iran. One by one, several top officials in Iran died under unusual or unfortunate circumstances. Over time, this created a pattern. Slowly, the main pillars of power in the country seemed to weaken. At the same time, strong statements were regularly coming from Iran's leadership. The supreme leader often spoke against Israel, and tension kept rising. On the other side, Israel repeatedly talked about removing what it sees as a long-term threat from Iran. Step by step, year by year, a large plan seemed to be forming. To understand this better, we need to look at Iran's power structure. Iran has a unique political system. It has elements of democracy such as a president and a parliament elected by the people. However, the constitution gives the highest power to the supreme leader. His decisions are final in almost every matter, including the media, the military, and the judiciary. Since 1979, only two people have held this position: Ayatollah Ruhollah Khamenei and the current supreme leader Ali Khamenei. Ayatollah is not a name, but a title for a high-ranking religious leader. The next important part of the power structure is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC. This force is separate from the regular army and is considered the personal military force of the supreme leader. In fact, IRGC soldiers often receive higher pay than regular soldiers. Their main duty is to protect the system and the supreme leader at all costs, both inside and outside the country. The IRGC also plays a major role beyond Iran's borders. It supports and controls several allied groups in the region, such as Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Palestine, and the Houthis in Yemen. These groups are funded, trained, and armed by the IRGC. They are often called part of the resistance. Through these groups, Iran extends its influence in the region. If any country opposes Iran strongly, this group can be used to respond or create pressure. This creates a pyramid-like structure of power in Iran, where the supreme leader is at the top, followed by the IRGC and then regional allied groups. But the most important part of this whole system is still what remains at its core. The main strength that makes Iran powerful is its nuclear program. Israel understands this very well. If Iran gets nuclear weapons, Israel believes its own existence could be in danger. These are two major threats. First, the nuclear threat, and second, Iran's powerful ballistic missiles, which can cause destruction similar to nuclear weapons. Because of this, Israel has targeted Iran's nuclear scientists and facilities many times in the past. It has carried out selective attacks to slow down Iran's progress. However, this time the plan seems bigger. Israel appears to want to weaken the entire power structure so that Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, becomes powerless. But this is very difficult to achieve. So, what strategy is Israel using? After the October 2023 attacks, Israel started following a top-down approach. This means attacking the top levels of the power structure first. They began by targeting Iran's allied groups, also known as proxy groups. Hamas was one of the first targets. Its top leaders were eliminated. Ismail Haniyeh, the head of Hamas, and Yahya Sinwar, his deputy, are both now dead. In August 2024, during the inauguration of Iran's new president, Masoud Pezeshkian, many international leaders were invited. Ismail Haniyeh was also invited. Israeli intelligence had repeatedly been waiting for this opportunity for months. When foreign guests visit Iran, they often stay at a source government guest house. Haniyeh stayed there as well, under heavy protection by the IRGC. According to reports, Israeli intelligence agents managed to place hidden explosives in the room's forehand. Once Haniyeh arrived at and was in his room, the explosives were activated remotely and he was killed in his sleep. This operation removed Hamas' top leader, leaving the organization suddenly without clear leadership. After this, leadership responsibilities fell on Yahya Sinwar, making him the next target. However, his death happened differently. In mid-October, Israeli soldiers were patrolling an area in Rafah when they encountered Hamas fighters. A gunfight broke out and some militants ran into a nearby house. The Israeli forces attacked the building leader. When they checked the area using a drone, they discovered that one of the dead militants was actually Yahya Sinwar, the new leader of Hamas. His identity was confirmed through a DNA test. With this, Israel announced that Hamas' top leadership had been eliminated again. After that, many other Hamas leaders were also killed in targeted strikes. As a result, the organization's leadership structure weakened significantly. Before 2024, a large number had been killed, showing that the group had become much weaker over time. Now, only small parts of Hamas remain in Gaza. The group has been weakened a lot, but Israel did not stop there. After Hamas, Israel focused on its next target, Hezbollah, which is based in Lebanon on the north. Hamas Nasrallah was the lead of Hezbollah and the most important figure in the group. In September 2024, Hezbollah's top leaders held a secret meeting in a city in Lebanon. This meeting was not in a normal building. It took place in a bunker, about 60 feet underground, designed to be very secure. However, Israeli intelligence reportedly found out about this meeting when all the top leaders gathered. Israeli fighter jets carried out a precious strike. They used special bunker blaster bombs, which are designed to go deep into the ground before exploding. Unlikely normal bomb that explode in impact, bunker buster bombs drill into the ground first and then explode underground. Because of this, the attack was extremely powerful. It destroyed the bunker and killed many top Hezbollah leaders, including Hassan Nasrallah. Just days before this attack, another unusual operation took place in Lebanon. There were reports of pager explosion. These were small communication devices, similar to those used before mobile phones became common. Hezbollah members had started using pagers to avoid being attacked. These devices were considered simple and hard to trace. However, according to reports, many of these pagers had been secretly turned into explosive devices. At the same time, across Lebanon, many pagers exploded in people's hands. Thousands were injured and some people died. This attack became very controversial around the world because some civilians were also affected. From October 2023 to 2024, thousands of Hezbollah fighters were killed. As a result, the group has also been greatly weakened. The last major group killed to Iran in the Houthis in Yemen, located to the south of Israel. Since October, they have also been launching missiles towards Israel. Some of these attacks even targeted important areas like in airports. However, Israel used a different strategy against them. Instead of only direct attacks, Israel focused on cutting off their supplies and weakening their ability to continue fighting. The Houthis were not able to stop the aggressive airstrikes. The Israeli Air Force carried out two major attacks, one on 26 December 2024 and another on 5 May 2025. These airstrikes, the main targets were Sana'a International Airport, Hodeidah Port, and Ras Isa Port. The Israeli forces destroyed runways, cranes, fuel storage areas, civilian aircrafts, and military facilities around the airport. The bigger impact of these attacks was that the Houthis lost important supply routes from Iran. Their missile launch systems were also badly damaged. Because of this, the number of missile attacks on Israel was reduced. According to reports, on 15 June 2025, a senior Houthis military commander was also killed in an airstrike. This left the group weakened and without a strong leadership. Overall, from Israel's point of view, it has targeted and weakened Iran's main allied groups, Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. This was given Israel a major strategic advantage. Iran's ability to carry out operations outside its borders has been reduced. After targeting these proxy groups, Israel focused on the next level of Iran's power structure, the IRGC. On 14 June 2025, Israel launched an operation called Operation Rising Lion. Although the attack itself lasted only a few hours, the planning had been going on for months. Reports suggest that intelligence agents had secretly entered Iran long before the operation. They smuggled in drones and small missile systems pieces by pieces. These were hidden inside ordinary vehicles and placed near Iran's missile defense system. At the same time, a secret drone launch site was set up inside Tehran. This showed a very high level of planning and coordination. On the day of the operation, once the signal was given, all these hidden drones were activated. They targeted Iran's air defense systems and destroyed them. When a country's air defense system is weakened, it becomes much easier for enemy aircraft to enter. After this, around 200 Israeli jets reportedly entered Iranian airspace and carried out strikes on about 100 targets. Among these targets were top military leaders, senior commanders, including high-ranking officials of the IRGC and the armed forces, were killed in these strikes. Reports say the attacks were extremely precise. In some cases, only the exact target was hit, while nearby buildings and rooms remained almost untouched. This shows the level of accuracy in the operation. There is now a list of top IRGC leaders and military commanders who were targeted by Israel. Many of them are no longer alive. Because of this, the IRGC's command structure has been badly damaged. When an army loses its strong leadership, it becomes confused and weak. It cannot function properly without direction. Even after this, Israel did not stop. Just 3 days after a new chief and army staff, Ali Sadmani, was appointed in June. He was killed in an airstrike. He was believed to be very close to Iran's supreme leader. Israel seems to be sending a clear message. Anyone who becomes a top leader in group or organization against Israel, whether Hamas, Hezbollah, or the IRGC, can become a target. It is also important to understand that the people who were killed were not just military leaders. Many of them were highly skilled experts and advisors. Many of them were highly skilled experts and advisors. They played a key role in running the country and shaping its targets and strategies. For more than 45 years, such leaders helped keep Iran's system strong. Their deaths are not just a loss for the IRGC, but a major setback for the entire Iranian government. In addition to this, under Operation Raging Lion, Israel also targeted Iran's nuclear facilities. On the map, these locations were shown as key sites. One of the main targets was Natanz, Iran's most important uranium enrichment facility, where material for nuclear weapons could be developed. Another target was the Isfahan site, which was an important research center related to nuclear development. Several other facilities across Iran were also attacked. Also with these sites, some of Iran's top nuclear scientists were also killed. These included well-known experts who had been working on Iran's nuclear program for many years. This is a major setback because rebuilding this knowledge and progress will take a long time. The next and most important possible step in this plan appears to be targeting Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. Public statements by Israel's leadership suggest a strong stance. In the past, Israel has often acted on what it has said. Because of this, some believe there is a real possibility that Iran's top leadership could be targeted in the future. This situation raises serious questions. Could this lead to a major political change in Iran? And would removing the supreme leader actually bring peace to the Middle East? History shows that such actions often create new challenges instead of simple solutions. History often repeats itself. If people do not learn from history, it tends to happen again. So let us look at history in detail. We will try to understand what has happened in countries where the United States has been involved. Did these countries become more stable or were they damaged? Let's look at facts instead of just ideas. For a long time, the United States has presented itself as a supporter of peace and development. On one hand, it gives financial help to many countries, but on the other hand, some people believe its actions have also caused harm in those same countries. These ideas may sound hard to believe, but there are many examples and case studies that people discuss. The United States carefully manages its global image. It often presents itself as a peaceful nation. If you ask how many wars the US is officially fighting right now, the answer given is usually zero. This is because officially the US may not declare war in the traditional way. However, this raises an important question. If the US is not official at war, why does it spend more than $800 billion every year on its military? The US explained that as a global superpower, it has the responsibility to maintain security and stability around the world. Because of this, it has been involved in countries like Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Pakistan, Somalia, Syria, and Yemen. often under the reason of humanitarian intervention. In fact, the US has security agreements or partnerships with many countries, more than 50 around the world. Some studies and reports suggest that US Army actions happen frequently. For example, one study claimed that, on average, dozens of airstrikes or missile actions have taken place daily in conflict areas during certain periods. During the presidency of Barack Obama, reports showed that thousands of bombs were dropped in different countries over several years. At the same time, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2009. This creates a debate and raises questions. How can a country promote peace while also being involved in so many military actions? Is this a tradition, or is there a deeper strategy behind it? Can other countries not catch up? And why do so many countries allow the United States to get involved in their political affairs? Many people believe this happened because the US uses many smart psychological strategies. If you look closely at its actions, you will notice a pattern. Whenever the US sends its forces somewhere, it presents the action in a positive way instead of calling it war. It often uses terms like humanitarian interventions or police action, where civilians are harmed during these operations. It is often described as collateral damage. This term became widely used during the Vietnam War. It was part of how such events were explained to the public. Even in 1949, the US changed the name of its Department of War to the United States Department of Defense. This was seen as a way to present a more defensive and peaceful image. These strategies are not limited to the government. Media also plays a role in shaping public opinions. For example, during conflicts in Syria, there have been moments where military actions were presented in a positive or dramatic way, even when the situation on the ground was serious. Because of this, many people question the idea of humanitarian intervention. Some believe that if people fully understood the reality behind these actions, their opinion of the US might change. To understand this better, let's look at the bigger picture. Since the 1990s, the US has been involved in many global conflicts, the regions often given up to maintain peace in the world. Second, to counter ideologies like communism. However, some argue that there are deeper reasons, such as maintaining global power and influence. If you look at a world map, you may notice that US actions are often not random. Many believe that each move is connected to strategic interests. For example, during the early 90s, countries like the US and the UK were going through the industrial revolutions. To keep industries running, they needed two main things: raw material and fuel. Raw materials were often taken from colonies, but oil became the most important resource for industry. In 1908, a large amount of oil was discovered in Iran. At that time, other countries in the Middle East had not yet discovered their oil reserves. Because of this, Iran became one of the main sources of oil. However, most of this oil was controlled and sold at low prices to foreign powers, especially Britain. Most of the profits went to them, not to Iran. At that time, Iran was getting only about 14% of the profit from its oil, while 86% went to the British. This meant that even though the oil belonged to Iran, most of the money was taken by others. This situation was similar to what happened in India under the East India Company, where resources were controlled and profits were taken by foreign powers. In the same way, Iran's oil was being controlled through foreign companies. Then, on 15th March 1951, a new prime minister came to power in Iran, Mohammad Mossadegh. After becoming prime minister, he made a bold decision. He nationalized Iran's oil industry and removed British control. Because of this, Iran gained full control over its oil and began to grow stronger. It had the potential to become a major power in the Middle East. However, this change also attracted the attention of the United States. What happened next followed a familiar pattern. Instead of direct military action, the US and the UK used intelligence agencies, the Central Intelligence Agencies and M16 to influence the situation. They spread propaganda against Mossadegh and presented him as a threat to Iran's stability and to the King Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. Within 2 years, Mossadegh was removed from power through a coup. After that, the Shah was strengthened as the ruler with support from the US and the UK. Once this new system was in place, foreign companies returned. Major oil companies began earning billions of dollars from Iran's oil. This shows a common strategy: remove a leader who does not align with your interests and replace them with someone who does. This allow control over resources and policies. The US did not stop there. It also used another strategy. The Shah began to feel insecure about his position. He feared that the people could remove him from power, so he wanted a strong military to protect himself. At this point, the US stepped in and sold large amounts of weapons to Iran, worth billions of dollars. Over time, the US earned huge profits both from oil and from weapons sales. However, this situation did not last forever. On 11 February 1979, the Iranian Revolution took place. The Shah was removed, and a new leader, Ruhollah Khamenei, came to power. After coming to power, Khamenei again nationalized Iran's oil resources. This ended foreign control once more. This explains why relations between the US and Iran became very tense after that. In simple terms, another strategy can be seen: support or strengthen opposition forces when it serves your interests. However, after the revolution, Khamenei became very powerful inside Iran. Because of his strong influence and strict rule, it became very difficult for any position to rise within the country. Because of this situation, the US looked beyond Iran and focused on the wider Middle East region. Nearby, there was another strong leader, Saddam Hussein of Iraq. At that time, the world was moving forward with technology, and many Middle Eastern countries like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Iraq were discovering large amounts of oil. Because of this, the US started building closer relationship with these countries. According to Noam Chomsky, the year 1982 was very important. During this time, under the relationship of Ronald Reagan, the US removed Iraq from its list of countries supporting terrorism and began supporting it. This support included financial aid and, according to some reports, even military-related assistance. At that time, Iraq became important to the US and two main reasons. First, the US wanted to counter Iran, so it supported a strong leader like Saddam Hussein in Iraq. Second, Iraq had very low oil production costs, which meant it could grow economically very fast. However, a strong Iraq was also not fully in the US interests. If Iraq became too powerful, it could become a major competitor in the region. So, the US strategy seemed to serve two purposes at once: support Iraq enough to balance Iran, but not allow it to become too powerful. This situation led to the Iran Iraq War, which lasted for about 8 years, but both countries suffered greatly. Millions of people were affected and many lost their lives. Instead of development, both nations faced economic and social damage. During this time, the US and other countries continued to sell weapons and technology, increasing their own profits while the conflict continued. Now let's look at another key event. On 30 December 2006, Saddam Hussein was executed after being captured. Before this, tension had increased because Saddam tried to expand Iraq's control over oil-rich areas, including Kuwait. This directly challenged US interests in the region. At the same time, there were discussions about using other currencies instead of the US dollar for oil trade, which could weaken US influence. Because of these reasons, the US took strong action against Iraq. It accused Saddam's government of having weapons of mass destruction, which became a major justification for military action. The US began making serious accusations, saying that Iraq had dangerous chemical weapons. It also claimed that Saddam Hussein was trying to develop weapons of mass destruction. These were the same types of weapons that, according to some reports, Iraq had received support for in earlier years. Later, Saddam Hussein was removed from power and eventually executed. After that, a new government was set up in Iraq. However, a few years later, an important fact came out. According to the Central Intelligence Agency itself, no confirmed weapons of mass destruction were found in Iraq. During this process, Iraq became unstable. After Saddam Hussein's removal, there was a power vacuum. This led to the rise of extremist groups like ISIS, which became one of the most dangerous terrorist organizations in the world. Because of this, many people urge that instability in the region helped such groups grow stronger. The effects of this instability were not limited to the Middle East but spread across the world, creating global security challenges. Some analysts describe this as a strategy where instability in one region can lead to influence or control. Whether fully true or not, the results have clearly been serious, including conflicts and the spread of terrorism. This kind of influence was not limited to the Middle East. In Latin America, for example, there were many attempts to influence governments during the 20th century. Reports suggest that intelligence operations were carried out in several countries over many years. Today, global focus is also shifting towards the Indo-Pacific region. Groups like the Quad, including countries such as US, India, Japan, Australia, have been formed to maintain balance and security in the region. The US often talks about keeping the Indo-Pacific free and open. This is important because a large part of global trade passes through key roads like the Strait of Malacca. Because of this, the Indo-Pacific region has become very important for global power, trade and influence. If another country becomes too dominant there, it could affect the balance of power. In simple terms, many believe that countries often act to protect their own interests first. Sometimes These actions can also affect other nations in serious ways. The US often acts in the name of moral policing and promoting democracy. For example, if you look at the Middle East, the US has many military bases there, claim humanitarian intervention. If you zoom out and look at the whole world, it is hard to find a place today where the US does not have influence. Honestly, this is very concerning. The US claims it tries to save humanity, but the results are often very harmful. For example, about 9 million people in Iraq, 7 million people in Syria, 50 million people in Afghanistan, 37 million people in India. Many innocent people became homeless because of wars and conflicts where the US was involved. After Saddam Hussein's death, the conditions for Iraqi prisoners were very harsh. This shows that the US is not always a force for peace. Look at Iraq, where ISIS emerged, Afghanistan, where the Taliban regained power, Libya, where civil war continues, Syria, where conflict is ongoing. Even in this situation, US interventions did not bring lasting peace. In the past, during imperialism, countries openly invaded and looted other nations. After the world wars, this practice was publicly banned, but today some superpowers still act similarly. Only more cleverly, they use positive public relations to hide their real motives. This is why it is important for countries to build their own vision, ethics, and values. Instead of exploiting weaker countries, strong nations can support them. I know this is easier said than done. Don't become global politics is messy, but having a vision for a better world is important. Global dynamics will continue to change naturally. New world orders will form and power will shift. If nations focus on altruism rather than selfishness, the world can become fairer. I strongly believe that, for example, India follows the principle of Vasudev Kutumbakam, the world is one family. If superpowers adopted this approach, many global problems could be solved. Some thinkers, like the Italian philosopher Niccolo Machiavelli, believed that those in power sometimes have to do harsh things to stay in control. However, they should use clever strategies to appear good publicly while managing difficult decisions behind the scenes. This school of thought still influences how powerful countries act today. The philosophy of Niccolo is well known. Many people have followed this philosophy. However, some have challenged it, saying that development and altruism, the power of doing good, can also help a leader or a superpower stay in power. So, there are two main ways of thinking. One is Machiavelli's philosophy, and the other focuses on goodness and altruism. Which school of thought do you agree with? Let us know in the comments below. I would love to hear your opinions.